I am 72 years old. I live in a beautiful, sun-drenched home in Sarasota, Florida. The mortgage was paid off 10 years ago. I have a solid pension from 30 years of teaching third grade. I am not a woman who needs a handout, but today I am sitting at my kitchen table looking at a Mother's Day card. It's a lovely card, gold foil, soft pink roses on the front. Inside, the message says, "To a mother who gave her all." I bought it myself at the Publix down the street. I had to, because for the third year in a row, my son, Claude, didn't send one. My phone has been silent all morning. No call, no text, not even a quick Happy Mother's Day on Facebook. I know what some of you are thinking. He's just a busy man, Vernice. He probably just forgot the date. I used to tell myself those same lies. I used to make excuses for him until the excuses ran out. Claude is my only son. I raised him to be kind. I raised him to be independent. But somewhere along the way, he met Tracy. And Tracy, well, she doesn't see me as a mother. She sees me as a bank, an ATM that occasionally gives out advice they don't want to hear. The only time my doorbell rings is when their life is falling apart. Last year, it was Claude's car. He needed $4,000 for a new transmission. The year before that, Tracy wanted to start a luxury candle business. She needed $10,000 for inventory. I gave it to them. Every time. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought I was buying a seat at their table. I was wrong. I am not a burden. I am healthy. I am sharp. I keep a clean house. Yet, I am treated like a secret they only reveal when they are desperate. When the money is in their account, the silence begins. And that silence is a weapon. Tracy is a master of this silent treatment. If I don't agree with her, if I don't write the check fast enough, she shuts the door. But she doesn't just shut the door on herself. She shuts it on my grandson, Leo. Leo is 6 years old. He has my late husband's eyes. He loves it when I read him stories about dinosaurs. But I haven't seen Leo in 4 months. Not because I'm far away. Charlotte, North Carolina is only a few hours by plane. I've offered to fly up. I've offered to pay for their gas, to come down. The answer is always the same. We're just so busy, Vernice. Leo has soccer. Tracy has a headache. It's a game. They know I'm a retired teacher. They know my heart lives and breathes for that little boy. So they use him. They hold my grandson over my head like a carrot. If you can't help us with the credit card debt this month, we might have to cancel our summer trip, which means Leo won't be able to visit you. It's cruel. It's calculated. And sitting here, looking at this card I bought for myself, I finally felt something shift. It wasn't sadness this time. It was a cold, hard realization. I have spent my retirement years waiting for them to love me. I have spent my savings waiting for them to respect me. But respect cannot be bought. I looked at the empty chair across from me. My husband, Bill, used to sit there. He would have been furious. He would have told me, "Vernice, stop letting them pull your strings." I finally understood what he meant. I am 72. My time is precious, and I will not spend another minute being a ghost in my own son's life. But Claude and Tracy didn't know that yet. They thought I was the same old Vernice, the one who cries, then signs the check. They were already planning their next big ask. They had a plan for my house. They had a plan for my life. And they thought I was too old or too lonely to see it coming. I picked up my tea. It was cold. I didn't care. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. I wasn't looking for a gift for Leo. I wasn't looking for a flight to Charlotte. I was looking at my bank statements. I was looking at the ledger of every loan I had given them over the last 5 years. $52,000. That is what it cost me to be ignored. I didn't call Claude. I didn't text Tracy. I just sat there in the quiet of my beautiful home. I realized that if I was going to be alone, I was going to be alone on my own terms. No more Mother's Day cards for myself. No more begging for a phone call. I reached for my phone, but I didn't dial my son. I dialed an old friend, a man I taught with years ago who went into law after he retired. Arthur, I said, my voice didn't shake. I need to talk to you about a bridge loan I made to my son. I need to know how to make it official. The game was changing. I was no longer the victim. I was a woman with a plan. And Claude, my dear son, was about to find out that a mother's love has a limit, especially when that mother is a retired schoolteacher who knows exactly how to handle a bully. Ready, I looked out the window at the palm trees. The sun was bright. The Florida sky was blue. It was a beautiful day for a new beginning. They wanted to play a game? Fine. But I was the one who was going to set the rules. And the first rule, the bank is closed. Permanently. I stood up and tore that Mother's Day card into 4 pieces. I dropped them in the trash. I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't just about a card. It was about the exact moment I realized my son didn't see me as a person. He saw me as a problem to be managed. Well, I was about to become a problem he couldn't afford to solve. 2 weeks after my silent Mother's Day, the phone finally rang. It wasn't an apology. It was a sales pitch. Claude's voice was different, higher, full of a forced kind of cheer that always makes my stomach turn. Mom, he shouted, we've been thinking about you so much. We have this amazing idea, something that's going to make everyone's life so much better. I didn't say a word. I just listened to the sound of my son, trying to pull a fast one. They wanted me to sell my home in Sarasota, the place where I grew my roses, the place where Bill's scent still lingers in the hallway closet. They wanted me to liquidate my biggest asset and move to Charlotte. You're getting older, Mom, Claude said. He said it like he was diagnosing me with a terminal illness. What if you fall? What if you're laying there for days and nobody knows? It keeps me up at night. I looked at my hands. They were steady. I haven't fallen once in 72 years. I walk 3 miles every morning, but Claude wasn't talking to the real me. He was talking to a version of me he created in his head, a frail, helpless old woman who couldn't manage her own life. Then came the loving proposal. Tracy got on the speakerphone. Vernice, we want to build a mother-in-law suite in our backyard. She said, a private little cottage just for you. You'll have your own entrance, but you'll be right there for Leo. He misses his grandma so much. There it was. The bait. The grandson. They told me the plan. I would sell my house. I would give them the proceeds to build this suite. In exchange, I would have a family. No more lonely holidays. No more quiet Sundays. I would be safe. I'm a retired teacher. I know when a student is lying to get out of a homework assignment. And I knew my son was lying now. But a part of me, the lonely part, wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that they finally cared. So, I told them I'd fly up to Charlotte to talk about it. I arrived on a Friday. The welcome lasted about 10 minutes. Then Tracy pulled out a binder. She didn't show me blueprints for a suite. She didn't show me a contract for a builder. She showed me a downsizing plan. We need to be realistic about your things, Vernice. Tracy said. She was walking through her own living room, pointing at nothing. Your house in Florida is too big. You have too much junk. Old books, that heavy dining table, those dusty curtains. She looked at me, her eyes sharp and cold. We should probably have a yard sale here for the smaller items and just list the big stuff on Facebook Marketplace before you move. My dining table was a wedding gift from my parents. It's solid cherry. It's not junk. But Tracy was already mentally putting price tags on my life. She had a list of my furniture. She had already checked the prices. That china cabinet won't fit in the new space, she said, flipping a page in her binder. I already found a buyer for it. A friend of mine. She'll give you $200. That cabinet is worth $2,000. I sat on their sofa, feeling like a guest in my own future. Claude was in the kitchen, avoiding my eyes. He was busy looking at a brochure for a new boat. A boat. Suddenly, the math started to make sense. My house in Sarasota is worth $600,000. A mother-in-law suite, a simple one, costs maybe $80,000. Where was the rest of that money going to go? Claude, I called out. He jumped a little. Where exactly is this suite going to be built? He pointed out the window to a patch of dirt near the fence. Right there, Mom. It'll be great. Close to the grill. I looked at the yard. There were no flags in the ground, no signs of a permit, no construction materials, just dirt. And how much is the builder charging? I asked. Tracy jumped back in. We're still getting quotes. But that's why we need you to list the Florida house now. The market is peaking. If we wait, we might lose out. That's the first tool of a scammer. They wanted me to move fast, so I wouldn't have time to think. That evening, I went for a walk. I didn't tell them where I was going. I walked to the end of the block, and I sat on a park bench. I realized something. They didn't want me close because they loved me. They wanted me close because I was a nest egg. They wanted the house gone because once the house was gone, I would have nowhere else to go. I would be trapped, tucked away in a backyard while they spent my hard-earned equity on boats and luxury SUVs. I thought about my roses in Sarasota. I thought about my neighbors who actually check on me. I thought about the downsizing Tracy was so excited about. She wasn't trying to simplify my life. She was trying to erase it. She wanted the money, but she didn't want the woman who owned it. I walked back to the house. The lights were on in the kitchen. I could hear them talking through the screen door. She's hesitating. Tracy whispered, I told you, play up the falling thing. Tell her Leo was crying because he thinks she's going to get sick all alone down there. Claude's voice was low. I know, but we need that deposit by the end of the month, or we lose the SUV. My heart didn't break. It turned to stone. My son was willing to sell my safety, my home, and my dignity for a car he couldn't afford. I walked inside. I put on my best teacher face, the one I used when a student was caught stealing from the lunchbox. I've made a decision, I said. They both turned, smiling like sharks. I'm going to sell the house, I told them. Tracy clapped her hands. Claude exhaled, a long, shaky breath of relief. But I added, wait, I'm not selling it yet. I need to see the permits first, and I need to see the contract for the suite with my name on the deed. The smiles vanished. Tracy's face went pale. The deed? But it's our backyard. Vernice, that doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense to me, I said. If my money builds it, I own it. That's how the world works. Claude looked at Tracy. Tracy looked at the floor. The loving proposal was starting to look like a legal nightmare for them. But they weren't done yet. They had one more card to play, the $50,000 investment. I went to bed that night in their guest room. It was cold. The pillows smelled like dust. I realized that the trap was already set. They thought they had me in a corner, but they forgot one thing. I spent 30 years teaching children how to follow rules, and I was about to teach Claude and Tracy the most important rule of all, consequences. I closed my eyes. I wasn't afraid of falling. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was only afraid of what I was going to have to do to my own son to survive. But I would do it because no one, not even my own blood, was going to put me in a backyard and call it a life. Tomorrow, the downsizing would begin. But it wouldn't be my furniture that was going. It would be their expectations. I was Vernice Fields, and I was just getting started. The morning air in Charlotte was heavy, damp, and smelled like the exhaust from Claude's new SUV. I was sitting on their patio, drinking a cup of tea that Tracy had made. She'd been extra sweet all morning. Too sweet. It was the kind of sweetness that feels like a thick syrup, hiding a bitter pill. Claude walked out, rubbing the back of his neck. He didn't sit in the chair next to me. He paced. Mom, he stopped. He looked at the fence, then at his shoes. We have a bit of a situation, a temporary thing, just a hiccup with the builder. My teacher's ear picked up the lie instantly. Builders don't cause hiccups that make a grown man tremble. Debt does. What is it, Claude? I asked. My voice was flat. Tracy stepped out, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. The truth is, my boutique, the one I started last year, the market changed. Vernice, the bank is being difficult with our line of credit. And because we already put the deposit down on the materials for your suite, everything is frozen. She leaned against the doorframe. Her face was a mask of bravery that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. We need a bridge loan, Claude said. Bridge. They love that word. It makes a deep, dark hole sound like a short walk. How much? I asked. $50,000, Claude blurted out. The birds in the backyard were the only things making noise. 50,000. That isn't a hiccup. That is a catastrophe. If we don't get the cash by Tuesday, the bank might call our primary mortgage. Tracy added. She walked over and sat on the edge of the table, leaning into my space. And if that happens, we lose this house. We lose the yard. Leo, poor Leo, he'd have to leave his school. He'd lose the only home he's ever known. There it was. The knife. They weren't asking me to invest in a suite anymore. They were telling me to buy my grandson's happiness. They were holding a 6-year-old boy in front of them like a human shield. You want Leo to be happy, don't you, Vernice? Tracy whispered. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were like steel. He was just saying how excited he is for you to move in. It would break his heart if we had to move into a cramped apartment across town. He wouldn't have a place to play. No yard. No grandma right there. I looked at my son, who I taught to tie his shoes, who I stayed up with when he had the croup. He was standing there, letting his wife use his child to bleed his mother dry. It's just until the boutique's fall line sells, Mom, Claude said. I'll pay you back every cent with interest. Think of it as an investment in our future together. My gut was screaming. No. Everything I had learned in 72 years told me that $50,000 was going into a sinking ship. I knew about the luxury SUV in the driveway. I knew about the expensive dinners Tracy posted on her Instagram. I knew the boutique was just a hobby for a woman who didn't want a real job. But I looked at the sliding glass door. Leo was inside, sitting on the floor, playing with his toy cars. He looked up and waved at me. He blew me a kiss through the glass. In that moment, I lost my edge. The loneliness I'd felt in Sarasota, the quiet of my house, it rushed back. I thought, maybe if I do this, the gate will finally open. Maybe they'll finally see that I'm on their side. I am a smart woman, but a lonely grandmother is a vulnerable thing. I'll write the check, I said. The change in the air was instant. Tracy didn't just smile, she glowed. She jumped up and hugged me. It was the first time she'd touched me in years. It felt cold, like being hugged by a mannequin. Claude slumped into a chair, his face red with relief. You're a lifesaver, Mom. Truly. I went to my purse. My hand was steady, but my heart was heavy. I wrote the check, $50,000. Pause. That money was my emergency fund. The money Bill and I had saved for the things a pension doesn't cover. new roof, medical surprises, the just-in-case money. Now it was gone. I handed the paper to Claude. He took it, and he didn't even look at me. He looked at the numbers. "I'll get this to the bank right away," he said. He was already standing up, already reaching for his keys. He didn't stay to finish his coffee. He didn't stay to talk to his mother. The bridge had been built, and he was already running across it, away from me. Tracy stayed behind. For a minute. "We should start looking at that yard sale for your Florida house," she said, her tone shifting back to business. "Now that the hiccup is handled, we need to get you moved up here fast." One word pause. Fast. She wanted my house listed before I could change my mind. She wanted my bridges in Florida burned. I sat there on the patio, alone again. I realized something as I watched the dust settle from Claude's tires. I hadn't bought a future. I hadn't bought a seat at the table. I had bought a ticket into their trap. I had given them $50,000, and they hadn't even offered me a fresh cup of tea. They hadn't even let Leo come outside to say thank you. The investment was a ransom payment, and the hostage was me. I looked down at my checkbook. The carbon copy of the check was still there. I stared at the signature, Vernice Fields. It looked like the signature of a woman I didn't recognize, a woman who was letting her heart overrule her head. But as I sat there, a tiny, quiet part of my brain, the teacher part, started to wake up. I realized that $50,000 was a lot of money, but it was also a record, proof. I had just handed them the rope. If they were going to be the family they promised, the rope would hold us together. But if they were lying, pause. If they were truly as toxic as my gut said, then that check would be the rope I used to pull their whole house down. I didn't know yet that I was buying my own exit. I didn't know that this check was the exact moment the countdown started. I just knew that the air in Charlotte felt thinner. And for the first time, the sun in Florida felt a long, long way away. I stood up. My knees ached a little. I walked inside. Tracy was already on her laptop, probably ordering new furniture for her boutique or clothes for herself. She didn't look up. "Is Leo ready for a story?" I asked. "Not now, Vernice," she snapped. "He's napping. And I'm busy." Busy. The money was in the bank. The lifesaver was no longer needed. The invisible resident was already moving in. I walked to the guest room, and I sat on that dusty bed. I took out my phone. I didn't call Arthur. Not yet. I just opened my notes. And I typed, May 22nd, $50,000. Loan. For bridge. Promised repayment. Interest. Purpose. To save house. I wasn't writing a diary. I was building a file. The trap was closed. But I was starting to realize I wasn't the only one caught in it. Claude and Tracy had no idea that they had just given me the ultimate power. The power of being the person they owed everything to. And in a family like ours, debt is the only thing they understand. Soon. Moving day is supposed to be a beginning. For me, it felt like an ending. I stood in the middle of a guest room in Charlotte, surrounded by cardboard boxes. My house in Florida was sold. The roses were gone. The cherry dining table sold for pennies. And as I looked around my new home, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It didn't smell like fresh paint or a mother-in-law suite. It smelled like rubber mats and old sweat. The suite wasn't built. The patch of dirt in the backyard was still just dirt. "The permits are taking longer than expected, Mom," Claude had told me when I pulled up in the driveway. "Just a few weeks in the guest room. We'll get you settled in no time." But when I walked into that room, I couldn't even find the bed. The space was packed with Claude's heavy gym equipment. A treadmill sat where my dresser should be. A rack of weights blocked the closet. I was 72 years old, and I was sleeping on a twin mattress, squeezed between a squat rack and a pile of Tracy's boutique returns. I was no longer the guest. I was the invisible resident. The first week was a blur of rules. Tracy didn't waste any time. On Monday morning, I went into the kitchen to make a piece of toast. "Oh, Vernice," Tracy said. She didn't look up from her phone. "We have a rhythm here. I don't like the kitchen being used before 9. It wakes up Leo, and I need my quiet time." I looked at the clock. It was 8:15. I've been waking up at 6 a.m. for 40 years. "I'll be quiet, Tracy," I said. "It's not about the noise," she snapped. "It's about the space. This is a small house. We have to have boundaries." Boundaries. Irony. She used that word like a shield, but she only used it against me. When she wanted to borrow my car, the boundary disappeared. When she wanted me to fold the laundry, the boundary was gone. Then came the reparenting. It started with Leo. I was sitting on the floor, showing him how to draw a tree. "Leo, don't listen to Grandma," Tracy shouted from the hallway. "We don't draw like that anymore. It's too messy. Go use your iPad." She walked into the room and took the crayons out of my hand. "Vernice, we have a specific educational plan for him. Please don't interfere. You're confusing him." I was a school teacher for 30 years. I've taught hundreds of children how to read and write. But in this house, I was treated like I didn't know which end of a crayon to hold. I was told when to sit. I was told when to speak. And then the most insulting blow of all. On Friday, Claude sat me down at the kitchen table. Tracy was standing behind him, arms crossed. "Mom, we've been looking at the budget," Claude said. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "With you being here, the utilities are going up. And Tracy says we're losing the privacy of our home." "Privacy?" I asked. "Yes," Tracy chimed in. "We did some research. A room like this, with a shared bathroom, goes for $1,200 a month in this neighborhood." I felt the blood drain from my face. $1,200. I whispered, "Claude, I gave you $50,000 last month for the bridge loan to save this house. That was a loan for the business, Vernice," Tracy said. Her voice was cold, clinical. "Rent is separate. We're providing you with a home and safety. It's only fair that you pay your way." Fair. I realized then that I wasn't in a family. I was in a transaction. I had performed a financial infusion. That's the word Arthur used later. It's when a senior puts money into a family to help everyone grow. But this was financial exploitation. They had taken my lump sum to save their SUV, and now they were coming for my monthly pension to pay for their lifestyle. I looked at my son. "Claude, do you really want your mother to pay rent after everything I've given you?" Claude looked at the treadmill in my room. He looked at his wife. "It's market rate, Mom. We're just trying to be professional about it." Professional. I went back to my room and sat on that twin mattress. I looked at the weights. I looked at the cardboard boxes that held my life. I was paying $1,200 a month to live in a gym. I was paying $1,200 a month to be told I couldn't make toast. I am a woman of quiet strength. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. But as I sat there, I started to see the signs I had missed. The way they only talked to me when a bill was on the counter. The way Tracy corrected my speech. The way they moved my things without asking. This wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. They wanted me small. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me broke. Because if I was broke, I couldn't leave. If I was small, I wouldn't fight back. They thought they were the parents now. They thought I was the child. But they forgot who I was. I am Vernice Fields. I have survived a recession, a mortgage, and 30 years of playground bullies. I know how to wait, and I know how to watch. I took out my checkbook. I wrote the check for $1,200. But in the memo line, I didn't write rent. I wrote housing payment, guest room/gym. I handed it to Tracy. She grabbed it, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the money. Thank you, Vernice. This will help so much. She thought she had won. Foolish. She didn't realize that every check I wrote was another nail in their coffin. Every rule she made was being logged in my mind. I was the invisible resident, but I had the best view in the house. I watched Tracy buy a new designer handbag that afternoon. I watched Claude order a new set of golf clubs. My rent wasn't going to the electric bill. It was going to their vanities. That night, I lay in the dark. The treadmill loomed over me like a shadow. I realized I wasn't just a resident. I was a prisoner who was paying for her own cell. But even prisoners have a way of getting messages out. Tomorrow, I would find a way to see Leo alone. And the day after that, I would start looking for the folder Tracy kept in the kitchen. The one she hid whenever I walked in. I am 72. I am sharp. And I am very, very angry. Patience. I whispered the word to myself. The bank was closed, but the investigation was just beginning. Pause. I was the invisible resident, but soon I was going to be the only thing they could see. Sometimes the truth doesn't come in a loud shout. It comes in a quiet, terrifying whisper. I was in the kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon. Tracy was out at her boutique. Claude was at work. I just wanted to mail a birthday card to a friend back in Sarasota. I needed a postage stamp. I looked in the junk drawer near the phone. Nothing. I checked the decorative bowl on the counter. Nothing. Then I saw a blue folder. It was tucked behind the microwave, half hidden by a stack of Tracy's cooking magazines. I thought maybe the stamps were inside. I opened it. My heart didn't just skip a beat. It felt like it stopped entirely. It wasn't a book of stamps. It was a log, a ledger of my life, written in Tracy's sharp, jagged handwriting. October 14th. It read, Vernice left the kettle on for 10 minutes. Possible cognitive decline. October 18th. Vernice forgot the name of Leo's soccer coach. Confusion setting in. October 22nd. Vernice left a damp tea bag on the granite counter, incapable of maintaining household standards. I stared at the pages. Dread. I wasn't looking at a budget. I was looking at a trap. They weren't just taking my money, they were building a case. Every tiny mistake I had made since moving in, things any normal person does, was being recorded, leaving a light on, misplacing my glasses for 5 minutes, repeating a story about my teaching days. Tracy had turned my normal aging into a medical evidence file. I flipped to the back of the folder. There was a printout from a website about involuntary guardianship in North Carolina, and next to it, a list of state-funded, assisted living facilities. Not the nice ones. The ones with gray walls and the smell of industrial cleaner. The ones you go to when you have nothing left. There was a sticky note attached to the list. It said, if we get guardianship by January, we can sell the Sarasota stocks to pay off the SUV and the boutique debt. State pays for the facility. House is finally ours. I had to lean against the counter to keep from falling. My own son, my Claude, he wasn't just letting Tracy be mean. He was a partner in this. They didn't want a mother-in-law suite. They never intended to build it. They wanted me out of their sight, but they wanted my remaining assets in their pockets. They wanted to declare me unfit so they could become the masters of my estate. I am a 72-year-old woman. I am a retired teacher. I am not confused. I am not declining. I am being hunted. I heard a car pull into the driveway. Panic. I shoved the folder back behind the microwave. I wiped my eyes. I sat at the kitchen table and picked up a magazine. My hands were shaking, so I tucked them under my thighs. Tracy walked in glowing. She was carrying 3 shopping bags from an expensive mall. "Oh, Vernice," she said. She didn't even look at me. "You're still in here? I thought you'd be napping. You've been looking so tired lately." The word tired sounded like a threat. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who was documenting my tea bags to steal my life. "I'm fine, Tracy," I said. My voice was low. I was just thinking about the suite. "When do the builders start?" Tracy paused. She put her bags on the counter, right next to the hidden folder. "Oh, you know how it is. Supply chain issues. It's a mess. Honestly, we're starting to wonder if a suite is the best thing for you. It might be too much for you to manage alone." She tilted her head. She gave me a look of fake, disgusting pity. "Maybe we should look at some alternatives. Places where you'd have professional help." Professional. She was testing the waters. She wanted to see if I would walk into the cage willingly. I felt a surge of heat in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It was fury. Pure, cold, schoolteacher fury. "I don't need help, Tracy," I said. I stood up. I managed a classroom of 30 children for 3 decades. I can manage a tea bag. Tracy's eyes flashed. The mask slipped for a second. "We'll see about that, Vernice. We'll see." She grabbed her bags and marched upstairs. I stood in the kitchen, alone. I realized I couldn't stay in this house much longer. If I stayed, I was giving them more evidence. If I stayed, I was letting them rewrite my story. But I couldn't just leave. They had $50,000 of my money. They were taking $1,200 a month in rent. I had sold my home in Florida. I was homeless on paper. I was exactly where they wanted me. I went to my room, the gym. I sat on the edge of that twin mattress. I looked at the weights. I looked at the treadmill. "No," I whispered it to the empty room. "I am not going to a facility. I am not going to be managed." I took out my phone. I went to my contacts. I scrolled past Claude. I scrolled past the home number. I found Arthur, my friend, the lawyer. I didn't call him. Not yet. I needed to be smart. I needed to be quiet. In teaching, we call it documenting the behavior. If Tracy wanted to keep a ledger, I would keep one too. But mine wouldn't be about tea bags. Mine would be about elder abuse. Mine would be about the $50,000 loan that was never repaid. Mine would be about the market rate, rent for a room full of gym equipment. I realized something then. The betrayal was complete. My son had chosen a luxury SUV over his mother's freedom. He had chosen Tracy's boutique over my dignity. He was waiting for me to fail. Fine. Let him wait. I reached behind my dresser and pulled out a small black notebook I had bought at the drugstore. I began to write. November 12th. Tracy threatened professional help after I questioned the suite construction. Attempted intimidation. November 12th. Discovered secret file documenting my daily movements. Intent to commit fraud. I am 72 years old. I am Vernice Fields. And they are about to learn that you never, ever try to outsmart a woman who has spent her life grading papers. I know how to find the errors. And I know how to fail the people who don't do the work. Watch. The hidden ledger was the end of my son's influence over me. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a woman preparing for war. And I had the one thing they lacked, the truth. I tucked my notebook under the mattress. I walked back out to the kitchen. I made another cup of tea. And this time, I made sure to put the tea bag exactly where it belonged. In the trash. I smiled. The game is on. Tracy. And you have no idea who you're playing with. Next up, Thanksgiving. The dinner they thought would be my final exam. It was going to be theirs. Wait. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about gratitude. In that house, it was about humiliation. I spent 2 days in that kitchen. I roasted the turkey. I made the stuffing from scratch, the way Bill used to love it. I peeled 30 pounds of potatoes until my knuckles ached. I thought, maybe if I made the perfect meal, the tension would break. Maybe they would remember I am a person, not a bank, not a burden, just a mother. Tracy's parents arrived at noon. They live in a country club community in South Carolina. They wore expensive wool sweaters. They smelled like mothballs and entitlement. Tracy didn't ask me to sit with them. She asked me to fetch the ice. She asked me to hang up their coats. I was the help, unpaid. When we finally sat down at the table, I felt a small flicker of pride. The spread was beautiful. It looked like a magazine. I reached for the gravy boat, but Tracy blocked my hand. "Oh, be careful, Vernice," she said. She laughed, a high, sharp sound that didn't have any joy in it. "We all know how your hands get. I'd hate for you to ruin the tablecloth. It's silk." My hands were perfectly steady. I looked at Claude. He was staring at his plate, stabbing a piece of turkey like it was an enemy. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look up. "Tracy tells us you've been having a hard time adjusting," Tracy's father said. He took a slow sip of wine. "It's a lot, moving at your age. The confusion, the clutter." Tracy leaned forward, smiling at her mother. "Oh, you wouldn't believe the guest room. I try to organize it, but Vernice just piles up those old teaching books. It's a fire hazard, really. Those books are my life. They are in neat boxes, tucked in a corner. But at this table, in front of strangers, they were clutter. I was confused. "The turkey is a bit dry, isn't it, Claude?" Tracy asked. She made a face, pushing her plate away. I told Vernice to use the meat thermometer, but she insists on doing things the old way. I suppose that's what happens when the mind starts to wander. I felt the heat rise in my neck. I am a 72-year-old woman. I am a college graduate. I am a homeowner. And I was being treated like a child who had burned a piece of toast. "The turkey is at 165 degrees. I said. My voice was low. It was firm. I checked it myself. Tracy's eyes snapped to mine. The sweet daughter-in-law was gone. "Don't be defensive, Vernice. It's unattractive. We're just concerned about your safety." She turned to her mother. "She left the stove on again, yesterday. If I hadn't been there, the whole house would have gone up." Liar. I hadn't touched the stove yesterday. Tracy had made tea and left it on herself. She was building the case. Right here, between the cranberry sauce and the pumpkin pie. I looked at Claude. "Claude," I said, "you were there. You know, I didn't use the stove." Claude finally looked at me. His eyes were empty. They were the eyes of a man who had already sold his soul for a quiet life and a luxury car. "Mom, let's not cause a scene," he whispered. "Just eat your dinner." The massacre wasn't physical. It was the slow, deliberate killing of my dignity. I sat there for another hour, listening to them talk about me as if I were a ghost. They discussed my future. They discussed the merits of memory care units. They did it while eating the food I had bought and cooked and served. When the meal was over, Leo came running into the room. He had a chocolate smudge on his cheek. He looked so happy. "Grandma," he cried. He ran toward me, arms open. I reached out to catch him. I needed that hug. I needed to feel like I belonged to something good. No. Tracy lunged across the room. She grabbed Leo by the shoulders and yanked him back, so hard he stumbled. "No. Leo, stay back." Leo started to cry. "Why? Mommy? I want Grandma." Tracy looked at her parents, then at me, her face full of fake terror. "Vernice, look at your eyes. You're acting erratic again. You're overstimulated." She stepped between me and my grandson. "Claude, take your mother to her room. She needs a sedative. She's becoming a danger to the child. I wasn't moving. I wasn't shouting. I was standing perfectly still with a napkin in my hand. But Tracy was performing. She was creating a moment for her parents to witness, a moment they could testify to later. I am not overstimulated, Tracy, I said. I am insulted. Tracy gasped. She put her hand over her heart. See, the mood swings. It's exactly what the doctor warned us about. Claude stood up. He walked over to me. He didn't touch me, but he stood close enough to move me. Mom, just go. Please. You're ruining Thanksgiving. Ruining. I looked at my son, the boy I carried, the man I funded. He thought I was ruining a dinner. He didn't realize he was ruining a family. I didn't argue. I didn't give them the erratic behavior they wanted. I turned around. I walked out of the dining room. I walked past the dirty dishes I was expected to wash. I walked into the gym. I sat on that twin mattress. I could hear them laughing in the other room. I heard the clink of glasses. I heard Tracy say, "It's getting worse every day. We have to act soon." I sat in the dark for 3 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't pray for them to change. I realized that the woman who walked into this house was dead. The woman who wanted a family was gone. And in her place was the schoolteacher, Vernice. I reached under my mattress. I pulled out my black notebook. My hand didn't shake. November 25th, Thanksgiving. Tracy made false accusations of safety risks in front of 4 witnesses. Claude refused to intervene. November 25th, intentional emotional abuse. Restriction of access to grandchild used as a form of punishment. I looked at the treadmill. I looked at the squat rack. I was 72 years old, and this was the exact moment. This was the breaking point. They thought they were the ones with the plan. They thought I was the one who was lost. But I knew exactly where I was. I was in a war zone, and the Thanksgiving massacre was the last victory they would ever have. Tomorrow, I would call Arthur. Tomorrow, I would start moving the money they couldn't see. I am Vernice Fields, and I am done being the help. I closed my notebook. I lay down in my clothes. I listened to the house grow quiet. I wasn't confused. I was focused, and by Christmas, Claude and Tracy would realize that the slow old woman was the only one who knew how to finish the game. Done. I woke up the day after Thanksgiving, and I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like a chess player. My emotions were tucked away in a small box deep in my mind. I didn't cry in the shower. I didn't stare at the wall. I went into schoolteacher mode. In a classroom, you don't win by screaming at the bullies. You win by having the better paperwork. Claude and Tracy were in a great mood. They had won Thanksgiving. They had successfully humiliated me in front of Tracy's parents. They thought I was broken. Tracy even offered me a forced smile over her coffee. "Vernice, I'm glad you're feeling better today. It's best to just move past these little episodes." I just nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't defend my sanity. I just sipped my tea, and I waited for them to leave. They had a big weekend planned. A water park trip, 3 hours away. "It's for Leo," Claude said, but I knew it was for Tracy. She wanted to stay in a luxury resort. She paid for it with the grocery money I had given them on Monday. $2,500 for a family getaway that didn't include me. "You should rest, Mom," Claude told me as he loaded the SUV. "Stay off your feet. Keep the house quiet." The moment that luxury SUV pulled out of the driveway, I moved. I didn't rest. I went straight to my room. I pulled out my black notebook. I pulled out the carbon copies of every check I had written since the day I arrived in Charlotte. And then I called Arthur. Arthur has been my friend for 40 years. He's seen me through my husband's funeral. He's seen me through my retirement. He's also a retired real estate attorney who knows how to spot a shark in a business suit. Vernice, he said. His voice was warm, but concerned. You sounded different on the phone. What's happening in that house? I told him everything. I told him about the $50,000 bridge loan. I told him about the market rate rent. I told him about the blue folder behind the microwave and the guardianship plan. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Vernice, they are playing a dangerous game. Arthur said, but they made a massive mistake. The check. Arthur asked me to look at the carbon copy of that $50,000 payment. Did you sign a gift letter, Vernice? Did Claude have you sign anything saying that money was a present? No, I said. He just said it was an investment. A loan to save the house. Good, Arthur whispered. Under North Carolina law and federal tax law, a gift of that size requires specific documentation. Without a gift letter. And without the construction of that suite, it's a debt, a personal loan. I felt a surge of cold air in my lungs. A debt. Arthur explained that because I was paying rent for a room that didn't exist as promised, I wasn't a family member living in a home. I was a tenant in an illegal dwelling. And that $50,000? It was a lien waiting to happen. I'm coming up there, Vernice, Arthur said. I'm going to bring a colleague, a younger man who handles litigation. We're going to draft a voluntary relinquishment of inheritance and a formal demand for repayment. No, I said, not yet. Strategy. I needed the house empty to do the real work. For the next 6 hours, I was a whirlwind. I didn't pack everything. I didn't want them to notice a half-empty room if they came home early. I packed my birth certificate, my marriage license, Bill's military discharge papers, the jewelry that Tracy had been borrowing without asking. I took the hidden ledger from behind the microwave. I made photocopies of every page at the library down the street. I put the original back. Let them keep their evidence. I had the truth. I went to the bank. I spoke to the manager, a woman who looked like she'd seen her share of family drama. I moved my remaining funds into a private account, an account Claude's name wasn't on. I revoked the power of attorney I had signed in a moment of weakness 3 years ago. I was cutting the lines, one by one, silent. By the time the sun started to set, I was back in the gym. I sat on that twin mattress. The house was quiet. It was the same kind of quiet I had in Sarasota, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt like power. I realized that Claude and Tracy thought I was an old woman who didn't understand technology. They thought I didn't understand the law. They thought my strength died with my husband. They were wrong. Bill was the one who taught me how to stand my ground. He used to say, Vernice, don't start a fight, but for heaven's sake, finish it. I looked at the black notebook. It was full now, a record of every insult, every threat, every dollar stolen. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was the plaintiff. I called a moving company, not for today, for Monday morning. I need a small crew, I told the man on the phone. And I need them to be fast. We're moving a lifetime of books and a gym out of a backyard. I went to the kitchen. I made a cup of tea. I didn't leave the bag on the counter. I didn't leave the stove on. I sat at the table, and I looked at the spot where Tracy's blue folder lived. Soon, they were at the water park. They were sliding down colorful tubes, laughing, spending my money. They thought they had 6 months to build their case for guardianship. They thought they had years to drain my stocks. They didn't realize they had 48 hours left. I felt a strange kind of peace. It's the peace a teacher feels when the final exam is printed and the answer key is hidden in her desk. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew exactly how much it was going to hurt Claude. And for the first time, I didn't care. Choices. He made his. Now, I was making mine. I wasn't just moving out. I was moving up. And the exact moment was just over the horizon. I lay down on that dusty bed. I closed my eyes. I didn't dream of the water park. I dreamed of Sarasota. I dreamed of the ocean. And I dreamed of the look on Tracy's face when she realized the ATM was not only broken, it was suing her for every cent. Ready? The luxury SUV pulled into the driveway at 4 o'clock on Sunday. I heard the doors slam. I heard Leo's tired whimpering. I heard Tracy's sharp voice complaining about the traffic. I sat in the high-backed armchair in the living room. I didn't move. I didn't get up to help with the bags. Beside me sat Arthur and a quiet man in a dark suit named Robert. Robert is a professional process server. He had a stack of papers on his lap. The house was mostly empty now. My boxes were already at a secure storage unit. The gym equipment was still in the guest room, but my life was gone. The front door swung open. Tracy walked in first, her arms full of wet towels and souvenir bags. "Vernice, we're home," she shouted. "The kitchen is a mess. I hope you've at least started on." She stopped, cold. She saw Arthur. She saw the stranger. She saw me, sitting there with my hands folded like a judge. Claude walked in behind her, holding Leo. "Mom, what's going on? Who are these people?" He looked at the empty hallway where my coat used to hang. His face went from confused to pale in 3 seconds. "Claude, Tracy, sit down," I said. My voice was the one I used for the most difficult parents back at the school. It was quiet. It was final. Tracy dropped the bags on the floor. "I don't know who you think you are, bringing strangers into our home. Leo, go to your room." Now, she turned on me, her face twisted. "Vernice, we talked about your erratic behavior. This is it. This is the breaking point. Claude, call the doctor." I looked at her. "The doctor isn't coming, Tracy, but the sheriff might if you don't listen." Arthur stood up. He placed a document on the coffee table. "My name is Arthur Vance. I am Vernice's attorney, and this is a formal demand for the repayment of a $50,000 loan, plus interest." Claude let go of Leo's hand. The boy ran upstairs, crying. "Loan." Claude whispered, "Mom, that was an investment. You said you wanted to help us. You said you wanted to live here." I said I wanted to live in a mother-in-law suite. I corrected him. Instead, I paid $12,000 in rent to sleep in a gym. I paid for your water park trip while you documented my tea bags in a blue folder. Tracy lunged for the microwave. She reached behind it. Her hand came back empty. I held up the blue folder. "Looking for this?" I asked. "I've read every page, Tracy. I've read about my cognitive decline. I've read about your plan to put me in a state home so you could keep my stocks." Tracy's eyes went wide. She looked like a trapped animal. That was just a journal. We were worried. We were trying to protect you." "You were trying to rob me?" I said. "Fact." Arthur cleared his throat. "Because the funds were used to pay down your primary mortgage and business debt, and because the promised construction never occurred, we have filed a certificate of non-attachment and a lease pendens. In plain English, there is now a legal lien on this house for $65,000. That includes the loan, the stolen rent, and legal fees." Claude slumped into a chair. $65,000? "Mom, we don't have that. The boutique is underwater. The SUV payments are 2 months behind. If you put a lien on the house, we can't refinance. We'll lose everything." Tracy started to scream. It was a horrible, screeching sound. "You old witch! We took you in. We gave you a family. And this is how you pay us back. You're ruining our lives. You're taking Leo's home away from him." I looked at my son. I waited for him to say, "Tracy, stop." I waited for him to say, "Mom, I'm sorry." But Claude didn't do that. He looked at me with pure, unfiltered hatred. She's right, he spat. You're ruining our lives. Is this what you wanted? To see your own son on the street? You're a selfish, bitter woman. I wish we'd never invited you. And there it was, the exact moment. The final thread snapped. I didn't feel a sting. I didn't feel a tear. I felt a strange, cold clarity. He didn't love me. He didn't even like me. He loved the $50,000. He loved the $1,200 a month. He loved the free cooking and the free laundry. He loved my balance sheet, not his mother. Ruining your life? I asked. I stood up. My knees didn't ache. I felt tall. No, Claude, I didn't ruin your life. I didn't tell you to buy a car you couldn't afford. I didn't tell you to fund a boutique that has no customers. I didn't tell you to lie to your mother about a suite that was never going to be built. I walked toward the door. Robert, the process server, stepped forward and handed Claude the final summons. You are being served, Robert said quietly. Tracy was hysterical now. You can't leave. You owe us for the rest of the year. We have a verbal agreement. I turned back at the threshold. I looked at the house. It was a beautiful house, built on a foundation of greed. I stopped subsidizing your disrespect, Claude. I said, that is not the same as ruining your life. It's called adulthood. Maybe you should try it. Don't you want to say goodbye to Leo? Claude yelled. He was trying one last time to use the child, desperate. I've already left a letter for Leo, I said, and I've left a phone for him with his teacher. He knows I love him, and he knows that Grandma had to go back to the sunshine. I walked out the door. The Charlotte air was cold, but I didn't shiver. I got into Arthur's car. I didn't look back. I didn't look at the SUV. I didn't look at the dirt patch in the yard. You okay? Arthur asked. He put the car in gear. I am 72 years old, Arthur, I said, and for the first time in my life, I am not anyone's backup plan. Free. As we drove away, I could hear Tracy's voice echoing from the porch. She was still screaming, but the windows were rolled up. The sound got smaller and smaller until it was nothing but a buzz. The exact moment wasn't the confrontation. It wasn't the lean. It was the silence that followed. The beautiful, peaceful, expensive silence of a woman who finally knew her own worth. Done. I am back in Florida. The air is thick, warm, and smells like salt water. I am sitting on my new balcony, watching the sunset over the Gulf. I am not in my old house. I decided not to go back to the ghosts of the past. Instead, I am in a luxury senior community. I have my own apartment, my own kitchen, where I can make toast at 4 a.m. if I want to. And the best part, there isn't a single piece of gym equipment in sight. Long pause. The aftermath was messy. It usually is when you stop being someone's easy money. Claude and Tracy tried to fight the lien. They hired a cheap lawyer, but Arthur was ready. He had the carbon copies of the checks. He had the hidden ledger Tracy had written. He had the proof that the suite was never built. They lost. Badly. To pay me back, they had to sell the luxury SUV. They had to liquidate the boutique inventory. And eventually, they had to sell the house in Charlotte. Tracy's parents didn't step in to help. Apparently, they only liked Tracy when she was winning. Claude is working 2 jobs now. Tracy is working at a real estate office as an assistant. They are living in a 3-bedroom apartment. It is a downsizing, but it wasn't mine. It was theirs. I don't know this because I talked to them. I don't. Blocked. The day I moved back to Florida, I blocked both of their numbers. I blocked their email addresses. I even blocked Tracy on Facebook. I am 72 years old. I do not have the time or the energy for digital abuse. I am done listening to their excuses. I am done being the villain in their story just because I stopped being the victim in mine. But I didn't forget Leo. I took the $65,000 they paid back. Every cent of it. I didn't spend it on a cruise. I didn't spend it on new jewelry. I put it into an irrevocable trust. It is a blocked account for Leo's college education. Claude cannot touch it. Tracy cannot touch it. Safe. Leo will have a future, even if his parents don't know how to manage a present. He'll know his grandma Vernice took care of him from a distance. Life here is different than I expected. I found a tribe. That's what we call ourselves. There are 6 of us. Martha, a retired nurse. Evelyn, who ran a bookstore. We meet every morning at the pool. We don't talk about our declining health. We talk about the books we're reading. We talk about our travels. And sometimes, over a glass of wine, we talk about the boundaries we had to build. I realized I wasn't the only one. Every woman at that pool has a story about a child who thought they were entitled to her soul. We don't judge each other. We just listen. And we remind each other that we are still here. I look at my hands now. They are still steady. I am still sharp. I spent 30 years teaching children how to grow up. I spent my retirement teaching my son the same thing. It was a hard lesson. It was an expensive lesson, but it was necessary. Long pause. I want to say something directly to you. Yes, you, the woman sitting there, perhaps wondering if she should say something about the way her daughter speaks to her. The woman who is considering helping her son with one more credit card bill. Listen, your children are entitled to your love. That is a gift we give freely, but they are not, under any circumstances, entitled to your life. They are not entitled to your peace. They are not entitled to the roof over your head or the dignity in your heart. Protecting yourself is not a sin. Saying no is not an act of war. It is an act of self-respect. If you are being treated like a bank, close the vault. If you are being treated like furniture, move out of the room. You have worked your whole life. You have earned the right to a new horizon. Do not let them steal your sunset just because they didn't plan for their own morning. Remember, I am Vernice Fields. I am 72. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. But most importantly, I am a woman who belongs to herself. The exact moment I went no contact wasn't a tragedy. It was a graduation. And the view from here is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to go for a walk on the beach now. The sand will be cool. The water will be blue. And my phone, silent, just the way I like it. Goodbye.